today we're making crab cakes. I've got the ingredient list here. Take note, this is for 2 pounds of crab meat. So adjust accordingly. I'm leaving some time here. Pause if you need to. I'll post this again at the end of the video. I'm going to start by chopping very finely a small amount of celery, onions, and red pepper. And I'm going to show you here what I mean by chop finely. I sometimes call this shaving because I cut small pieces and then as I chop I just barely move my knife. I want this very fine. And I want about 2 tablespoons full each of the celery, the peppers, and the onions. So chop, chop, chop. So I have about a 1/2 stick butter here in Grandma Velma's cast iron pan. This is my oldest pan. I have no idea how old it is. I'm gonna put these veggies in here, and this is on a medium to low heat. I really don't have much of a sizzle yet. I don't want a lot of color on these. We're just sweating them. I want them to get a little softer, to get translucent. I'll put a little salt on here to hurry the process along. And this is only going to take a couple minutes max. Not looking for a lot of color. Just want to let the flavors start letting go and the moisture start letting go. So I have here a healthy pinch of my dried sage. I don't know, it's hard to measure. It's a pinch. And I'm going to rub it between my hands. Hence it's called rub sage. I dried this from the sage in my garden. I'm going to end up with about maybe a teaspoonful total. Don't want any big pieces. And I'm going to put that in there with my veggies and let it simmer at this low heat. And one reason for doing this on low heat, kind of slow, wait a minute, there's a big piece of sage, is because the butter from this is going to go into our slurry, and I don't want it to scorch. So stir, stir. This is a short process here, so stay right with it. And I think we're starting to get some color. I'm going to give you a little close-up here so you can see. This is what we're looking for. The vegetables are translucent. They smell wonderful. How could they not? I'm going to turn this off, set it on the back of the stove, and let it cool. So almost every crab cake recipe I've ever seen has Old Bay seasoning, and I don't particularly like Old Bay seasoning. So I'm mixing up a spice profile here, and you can mix your own. There's about 1/8 teaspoonful each of dry mustard, allspice, paprika, red pepper flakes, and thyme. I would use tarragon if I had it, but I don't really have any tarragon. I'll have to grow some of that. You can adjust this to suit yourself, or you can buy Old Bay. Either way, the spice profile is something you can work on to make it what you like. So now we're going to make our slurry. And remember, as I do this, this is a recipe for 2 pounds of crab. And I got right in the middle of it and realized, wait, I only have 1 pound of crab. So you're probably going to want to cut this in half. Now I'm beating up 2 eggs, going to make them nice and foamy. And I'm taking my cooled sauteed vegetables and I'm going to pour the butter off into these eggs and sort of beat it to emulsify it. This is why we let it cool first. Then I'll dump the veggies in. and just mix them up well. Here's my fake Old Bay seasoning. Gonna dump that in. And you may like Old Bay. This is fresh breadcrumbs. Just beat it up in the food processor. A couple of slices of day-old bread. This is going to vary a lot. We'll use some cracker crumbs to make up the difference. And I probably would go ahead and use 2 slices even for the half recipe. This is some homemade aioli sauce, and I've got a recipe for that separately, or I'll be posting later. There was a cup of it. I'm putting about half, a little bit less than half. And I'm also going to add mayonnaise. You could use only mayonnaise if you wanted to. The aioli sauce has some garlic in it and a little bit different flavors. This is about a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise. And you can use all mayonnaise if you like to, or all aioli. Either way, about a 1/2 cup altogether for this recipe, and more like a 1/4 cup if you're cutting it in half. Mix, mix, mix. So here I have matzo meal, which is a kind of a light cracker crumb mixture. I'm going to add as little of this as I possibly can to get the firmness I need. No more than a 1/4 cup total. I started out with the fresh breadcrumbs, and then I add a little bit of this matzo meal because I want to firm this up a little bit. But don't overdo. Add it a little at a time and carefully. Going to squeeze in the juice of half a lemon. And I didn't show you, but I did just a tiny bit of zest too. So at this point, we want the thickness of a very thick batter. So here's the star of the show. This is the crab meat. I have a 6-ounce can of the body meat and an 8-ounce can of the claw meat, which is bigger lumps. And I don't want to break the lumps up. I'm just going to kind of separate it all out here. The really good meat costs about $32 a pound. This is not that. So I'm going to add the slurry. That's about 1/3 of it. I don't want too much slurry. And I'm going to mix it kind of carefully. I don't want to break up the lumps that I do have here. So I add the slurry a little at a time. And you're going to have to kind of make a judgment call here. We want this to stick together to make the patties. We may have to add just a little bit more cracker meal, just enough to make sure it holds together. So we're going for a texture where we still have some lumps in there, and it's going to stick together. We're going to have to handle it a little bit. And when you get it all mixed, we're going to set this in the refrigerator and let the flavors meld and let it firm up a little bit for about half an hour. So this wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't forget something important, right? So in the slurry, I never added salt and pepper. So I'm going to add about a 1/2 teaspoonful of salt and some freshly ground pepper here. And I'm going to mix them together. I've been mixing the crab meat more than I really wanted to, so I'm going to mix it really, really gently. But you can see we've got a pretty good texture here for making patties. Okay, finally, let's make crab cakes. Now, I've done this a while, so I kind of know how much I want. That's a big old heaping tablespoonful. It works out to about 2.5 ounces. And I sort of mash it in my hand and make sure there's no excess liquid, and then form it into a patty. Not too thin. And then I'm going to drop it down in some panko crumbs. And this is a very light coating of panko crumbs. And it helps with a little bit of crunch, and it kind of helps them hold together. So again, that's a big tablespoonful. If you have a 2.5, 3 ounce scoop, use that. Something else that measures out about 2.5 to 3 ounces. Anything bigger, and you have to cook them too long. So I'll make these up and then come back and show you what I got. I was aiming for 7 patties. I ended up with 8. That's okay. I'll work it out. I'll meet you at the stove. This is a half stick of butter and an equal amount of sunflower oil. I dropped on medium heat, medium to high. I dropped a bit in to check for a sizzle, and it's about ready. I'm going to get that little bit out, and then we'll start frying. Going to put these in on the spatula so that I don't get so much splash. And I've got a good little sizzle going there. Now, we're not going to cook these done here. We're browning them. And it'll be about 2 minutes per side, enough to get a nice brown crunch on the outside. And then we'll finish cooking them in the oven. I have my oven preheating to 400 degrees right now. And it's 2 minutes later, and you can see a little brown creeping up the sides. I'm going to turn these with a fork pretty carefully. They're still a little tender and they might fall apart, so I'm just doing it pretty gently. But you see that nice brown? I mean, I think these are beautiful. We're going to leave them on this side for another 1.5 to 2 minutes. Just want to get them sealed. Got to be a little careful. And that foaming now is just the butter. Don't worry about that. Nothing's burning. Be back. 2 minutes later, and these are ready to take up. Not ready to eat, ready to move to a baking dish or a baking pan. And I'm going to put them in the oven. Now this usually takes about 8 minutes or so. You just want to make sure that they're good and hot all the way through. We're not going to need the oven to brown them because they're nice and brown and pretty. Ready for the oven. The pan looks a little dry, but some more oil will cook out and they'll crisp up even more, but they're pretty crispy right now. So about 8 minutes and we'll be back. Is that gorgeous or what? And some of the oil cooked out. They continue to sizzle in the oven. They smell great. They're crispy. Let's plate them up. Now I think this plate might cost you about $35 in a restaurant. And these are so good. I'm going to show you that there are still plenty of good-sized lumps in here. And this was not the expensive crab meat. All crab meat's expensive. But you see the nice lumps and the nice texture. And I'm serving it with a little saffron rice and my homemade aioli / remoulade. I've got that in a different video. I'll show that to you. And I'm going to give it a shot. You know I love crab cakes. Who doesn't love crab cakes? And yes, they're good. They're crispy. They've got nice chunks of crab inside. You really should try this. Not hard. Several steps, but they go pretty quickly. And I'm going to have one more bite. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. I hope to see you again tomorrow. And hold on for the ingredient list again.